In the last 10 minutes in the last half-hour, Tillerson denies U.S. plans to form Syria border force. In the last hour, USO's Turkey explanation on border force. Tillerson at Hoover, Rex Tillerson advocates maintaining U.S. presence in Syria. In the last 2 hours, Syrian regime says it wants U.S. troops out. Tillerson says they're staying. Tillerson says U.S. has no intention of building Syrian border force. In the last 4 hours, U.S. we will not build border forces. Rex Tillerson to visit UK next week. Report. Tillerson U.S. troops staying in Syria to counter Assad. Iran. Tillerson sanctions really starting to hurt North Korea. U.S. signals deeper commitment in Syria. America changes tune over 30,000 soldier border security force. Tillerson non-committal on presiding at London embassy opening. Tillerson says U.S. to maintain military presence in Syria. Tillerson says U.S. sees path for regime change in Syria. In the last 6 hours, Canada joins U.S. in stepping up threats against North Korea at Vancouver. Sanctions hurting North Korea. Tillerson to visit London, hopes to visit new embassy. U.S. troops staying in Syria to counter Assad. Iran. Tillerson says the latest. Tillerson says NK responsible for suffering. U.S. will not build Syrian border force. Tillerson says Tillerson U.S. staying in Syria. Tillerson says U.S. has no intention to build border force in Syria. In the last 8 hours, Tillerson pledges long-term U.S. military engagement in Syria. U.S. will consider Turkey's concerns about PKK. Tillerson aide Prince Trump tweets to track U.S. foreign policy. U.S. says sanctions really starting to hurt North Korea. U.S. will consider Turkey's concerns about PKK, says Tillerson earlier today. Tillerson says Trump world-class at social media and Korea's November missile test puts civilian air traffic in danger. Tillerson says U.S. troops to stay in Syria to counter Assad and Iran. Tillerson's old-school way to deal with Trump tweets. Tillerson prints out Trump tweets while planning policies. Tillerson gets printouts of Trump's tweets for policy matters. Tillerson says sanctions are really starting to hurt North Korea. Tillerson sees long-term U.S. presence in Syria threat of end Korea war growing. Tillerson Secretary of State. Tillerson sees North Korea sanctions working. Tillerson says U.S. needs Ankara's close cooperation in Syria. Yesterday, Tillerson sees Syria regime change. U.S. military to maintain open-ended presence in Syria. Tillerson U.S. forces will remain in Syria indefinitely. Vancouver foreign ministers meeting on North Korea. Opening remarks. U.S. to maintain open-ended military presence in Syria, says Tillerson. Tillerson prints out Trump's tweets to help set foreign policy. Tillerson U.S. will discourage international trade with Assad. Syria. Tillerson staff prints out the president's tweets for him to read. Rex Tillerson crucial to maintain U.S. military presence in Syria. U.S. troops will stay in Syria to counter strategic threat from Iran. Tillerson U.S. troops will remain in Syria to stop resurrection of Daesh. North Korea is hurting. USA warned sanctions will cripple Kim's rogue state. Tillerson warns North Korea talks, not war, with America, the best option. U.S. strategic shift in Syria turns focus from ISIS to Iran. Tillerson says Kim Jong-un must tell me he wants to talk U.S. military to maintain open-ended presence in Syria. Tillerson says nothing has changed between Africa and U.S. Tillerson U.S. will maintain a military presence in Syria. House votes to restore top cyber diplomat's office. Tillerson evidence sanctions really starting to hurt North Korea. Tillerson pledges open-ended military presence in Syria to counter Iran. Tillerson aims to calm Turkey's Syria fears. U.S. to maintain military presence in Syria. Tillerson says U.S. troops in Syria to counter Assad. Rex Tillerson warned China of war over North Korea. The outrageous plan to keep U.S. troops in Syria indefinitely. Tillerson signals open-ended U.S. military presence in Syria. Tillerson says evidence sanctions really starting to hurt North Korea. Tillerson outlines plan for long-term U.S. military role in Syria. Tillerson signals deeper U.S. military commitment in Syria. U.S. rallies allies to consider tougher end Korea sanctions.